everyone, and welcome to the WarmlyYours webinar, Snow Melting Install from Start to Finish. I'm Lene Groschi. I manage social media communications here at WarmlyYours, and I'll be your co-host today, along with Scott Rosenbaum, Manager of Technical Support, as we discuss snow melting systems. We're hosting this webinar today because one of the most common questions asked is how is it installed? Our goal today is to walk you through the entire install of a snow melting system in an asphalt driveway, and while we walk you through the process, it's pretty straightforward, but we're here to answer any questions you have. If you have a question at any point during this webinar, you can submit it by using the Q&A function located in the left-hand side of your screen. We'll try to answer all your questions by the end of this webinar. I'll be checking back in with you while the live questions come in, and some of the questions in registration will be asked or received during this webinar. Right now, I'm going to hand it over to Scott for the technical side of things. So go ahead and take it away, Scott.
Thank you, Lene. We're going to be talking about installing snow melting, and we're going to be using a specific installation that we did to help you check and see what goes on in the process of installing these systems. What is snow melting, you might be asking yourself? Embedded heating element. That's what we have. We have an electric heating cable that is installed inside the driveway, and it is different than a hydronic system because with hydronic systems you actually have water going through plastic tubing, and the problem with plastic tubing is that it doesn't really work very well with 300-degree asphalt. So if you're putting in asphalt, really one of the best things to do is to go ahead and use electric heating cable because it's decided and designed to withstand those high temperatures. So one of the main benefits with electric heat is that it is you don't have boilers, you don't have pumps, you don't have this PEX tubing that you have to deal with, you don't have valves that you need to do service on, that sort of thing. So it's got its definite benefits. Now let's take a look at our WarmlyYours snow melting system in comparison with other ways to get rid of snow. Now we all know that there sometimes are neighborhood kids who like to take their shovel and shovel off your driveway. Well, if you look at that driveway, that's quite a bit of shoveling right there. Also, there are trucks that come with plows and plow that off. The problem is after you've had a winter full of snow, you have a pile 20 feet high, 40 feet wide of snow on one end of the driveway, and you're not going to have that with electric snow melting. So how does it benefit the end user? Well, that means that you're not going to hurt your back by shoveling all the time, and you're not going to be trying to find somebody with a plow to come get rid of your snow.
And you don't need any salt for this, right?
No, this is purely done with electrical heat. So it saves those plants from dying from a bunch of salt being poured all over them, and you don't have to worry about the neighborhood animals or your pets getting stuck with any of those nasty removal chemicals. Now, when should you install a snow melting system? Well, it's embedded, so it needs to go in if you are redoing your driveway or if you're putting in a brand new driveway. Now, if we take a look at this particular job, where the driveway is sitting, it used to be just an open area of dirt. So what they've done is they've identified that area, and the customer had a problem. They had trouble turning and getting multiple cars in and out at one time because of a narrow driveway that curved up in front of the house and went over. So they've done this as a bypass kind of thing, an expansion. Now, the good thing about this is when they go to redo that that pavement there in the foreground of both pictures, you can see it's old and it's worn. When they're ready to do that, they can rip that up and then install more electrical heating in there as their electrical panel will permit.
Now, Scott, we actually have a customer question. Joyce would actually want to see what a dimension line drawing for this kind of system would look like, and it looks like you have it pulled up here. Is this what she probably would be talking about?
Yeah, I'm guessing that she would want something that is shown in our SmartPlan. Now, our SmartPlan, what it is you would send us a drawing, like in the upper left-hand corner of that the slide that we're looking at now, and you would put the dimensions on that, and then what we would do is we would take your drawing and the dimensions you supply us and put in the product like you see it there. Now, why is this plan so good? Well, it gives you an idea how the product lays out before you go out and try to do it yourself. What's in this Warmly Yours Smart Plan? It looks like, it tells you how much it costs per hour to operate it, tells you how many amps it takes to use it, what the total wattage is of the system, and how many breakers you're going to need for this particular system.
Now, Scott, what if someone does not have enough electricity to power this?
Well, that's a major thing to worry about. What you're wanting to do is the first thing is you make this drawing for us and you send it in, and then we tell you how many amps it's going to need. You're going to then look in your breaker box and see if you have the breaker space available and if you have the available power or not. If you don't have the available power or the breakers, what you can do is you can run a controller that will run these separately. So if you look there on the plan, you can see 1 in a circle, a 2 in a circle, a 3 in a circle, a 4 in a circle. Those numbers represent the mat numbers, and you can see what the amperage is of each one of those. We go 20 amps, 20 amps, 12 amps, and 8 amps. So if you only have, say, 30 amps available, what you can do is you can split this into 3 zones or 4 zones, making sure that the total load of each one of these mats is less than that particular breaker. And then what you can do is you can do mat number 1, turn it off, mat number 2, turn it off, mat number 3, turn it off, mat number 4, turn it off, and then just go around in the circle like that. On, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. And that way you're only using a certain amount of amperage. Now, if you're doing a zoning control like that, you have to keep in mind that the best snow removal happens when the whole system turns on at once. If you have to break it into 2, 3, or 4 separate zones, it could take 2, 3, or 4 times longer to make the entire area heat than it would if you just turned it all on at once. That's a great question. Now, how does someone get a smart plan? All you have to do is just send it to us, and we will take that drawing and we will get this plan to you right away so you have an idea of what your plan is going to need. All right, so let's say that you want to heat your entire driveway. Well, if you have a very, very large driveway, that could be hundreds and hundreds of amps. If you look at the bottom coverage, I mean, that's what we call full coverage. You could probably fit 1 or 2 more mats into that area, and then you're adding, more and more amps to that particular plan. Now you can do tire tracks, you can do full coverage if you have enough electricity available, or you can do a hybrid of each. Let's say you want to put full coverage in the front of your garage, 10 or 12 feet out in front of your garage, and then do tire tracks all the way out to the sidewalk or all the way out to the road. You're more than welcome to do that. The thing is, if you're running low on power and you don't have a lot of power available, the best thing to do is to do tire tracks. Now, there is one thing you have to watch out for, and that is if you have pavers, we don't suggest that you use tire tracks. And if you want to know the reason why, just give us a call. We'll explain how that thing works. But if you're doing tire tracks, you can do them with asphalt, or you can do them with concrete. Now, if you want to go ahead and do the tire tracks, you have to measure the distance between your front and back wheels on your car or truck, and then just make sure that measurement matches the center of the tire track mats that we see here. Those mats are 2 feet wide, so that provides plenty of plus or minus there for you to get your car out to the street. Now let's take a look at a cross section of asphalt. So here we have gravel, about 4 to 12 inches or maybe more depending on what's needed. A contractor will tell you that. Then you're going to have a base coat of asphalt, and then you're going to have our snow melting mat, which is 5/16 of an inch thick, and then you're going to have a finished layer of asphalt. If you talk to your asphalt contractor and they want to do one single pour of 3 inches, that's not going to work. You need a base coat, then put the cables on top of that, and then put a top coat, finished coat on the top of that. That's how you would do the layer of an asphalt installation.
Now, Scott, we did have a question asking, will snow melting systems work under concrete and pavers? And it sounded like, as you mentioned before, yes, they can.
Yes, yeah, you can use it under concrete. You can use it under pavers. You can use it in a lot of different applications. You cannot go in gravel. You can't do just a gravel driveway. That's not going to work with electric cables, but it can go between asphalt and concrete. If you are using pavers and you're doing a driveway, you have to do full coverage, not just tire track. Now, one of the first steps in getting started is you're going to have your contractor come out and excavate and compact the ground. So before you do that, you're going to want to call Julie or whatever other um, company or municipality will tell you where the cables for your electric are, where your cable is for your TV, where your gas lines run, where all those types of things are buried in the ground. You are going to want to call and get those marked first, because the last thing you want to do is have a guy out here with a tool and cutting through your cable or cutting through your gas line or anything like that. That would be extraordinarily bad news. So prior to digging, make sure that you contact the local authorities and have them come out and indicate where those things are. Now, this stage was done very, very early. They had to clear a tree or two to get this to fit into here, but they did it without any problems. They excavated it. They ran. They packed the soil down to get ready for gravel. Now, compacted gravel is very, very good for drainage, and that's one of the primary reasons it's put in there. It's also used to firm up and solidify the base that the asphalt's going over. Now, you may need 4 to 8 inches. You may need 12 inches. You may need 16 or whatever to get the right height in your project. So when you're building your layers, you're getting up to any adjoining asphalt. You want to make sure those are nice and even. So you would use the gravel to fill that space. So I can't tell you what you're going to use. We suggest at least 4 to 8 inches, but you're going to talk to your local contractor and they'll tell you how thick that layer has to be. Next thing you have to do is you have to prep for the junction box. The junction box is going to be installed near where the product is installed. And what's very, very important is that you tell us where the junction box is going to be when you send your plan in. When you send your plan in, show us where it is so we can design the drawing so all the mats will start right near the junction box. Please keep in mind that the cold leads are either 20 feet or 50 feet long, and that's all they are. Cold leads are just there to get the electricity from the junction box to the heating mats. They're not designed to go from the heating mats all the way back to the house. They're designed to go from the driveway to this box, and that's where this power cables meet up with the power being fed to the house, or from the house, I should say. So the junction box has got to be waterproof. Let's take a look at this first base coat. They've got the gravel in, they've got it packed down, and now they're putting in the base coat. And the base coat is going to be put in, and remember, asphalt is very hot. So if you're going to be doing this yourself, make sure you have a good pair of thick shoes. And also, time is ticking. As soon as that asphalt arrives at your location, you are on the clock. So they need to get that system down as quickly as possible. So you're going to see they're going to hustle through getting this first layer in, and they're going to be using a paving machine to put this layer down over the gravel. Now this is going to be 2 inches, 3 inches, whatever this first base coat has to be, and that's going to give you the strength, and that's going to give you the surface to put your cables down on. Now, the next thing we do is we look now and we can see that the base coat has been put in. We have to act very quickly here. We have to use our SmartPlan, and we roll the cables out to make sure that both of them are going to fit in the area it's designed to fit into. So once that does, we roll it back up, because the system has to be rolled up for us to install the top coat over these heating mats. Now, what you want to do, this should be the very, very beginning of our presentation, because as soon as you get the box of our equipment, you need to test the heating mats and the cables that day. The last thing you want to do is go out to the job, have the asphalt guy there, you go to put it in and test it, and you find out that something happened to this cable on the way to you. Each one of our cables and each one of our mats are tested with an ohm meter and a mega ohm meter before they leave the factory. They're tested right before they ship. So we know they're good when they leave here. If something happens to them on the way, you want to know that 2 or 3 days before you install them so we can get you out replacements. You do not want to find this out when the concrete guy or the asphalt guy is there ready to start working. You can't say, okay, well, can you guys come back tomorrow because I'm testing and one of these mats, there's something's happened to it on the way here. So you're going to need an ohm meter and you're going to need a mega ohm meter. Both of those items are very important. Do not get one of those analog meters that has the needle that goes back and forth, because whenever you start thinking about analog meters, this is what you should think. None of that. You're not going to have an analog meter. You're going to have a digital meter. They're very inexpensive, and supplying these ohms readings in your installation manual is going to help with your 10-year warranty, and get those numbers down and get them written in there, and that's going to be your record of a successful installation. Now, there's two ways to start laying out the snow melting mats. You can pour some asphalt over the rolled up, not the rolled up part of the mat, but you roll it up a little bit, and then the exposed part that's there, you pour asphalt onto. Or you can do the same thing if the base coat is still soft. You just go ahead and stake it into there. Well, let's go back. Let's go back before we let's go back for just a second. When you're staking through here, just make sure that you're staking through the black plastic mesh. You do not want to staple or run this thing into the cable. You want to do it through the black mesh. So that's what we're doing here. So we're doing that with a plastic stake also. So please take note that we're only rolling out a few feet at a time, and that is very key to the next few steps. Now, if you look here, there are no paving machines allowed in this step. So just keep that in mind. What you're doing is you've got a low boy here, and he is going to be dropping asphalt every couple of feet as you roll out the rolls. Because when you're doing this, you're going to be grabbing the rolls, you're going to be pulling them towards you to make them taut, to make sure that they're staying taut. Because if you don't keep them taut, you're going to run out of cable at the end of the run. You need to keep it nice and tight. So you cannot use a mechanical paving machine for this. You're going to use shovels, rakes, and if you have sharp shovels, you're going to be putting duct tape over the ends of them so you don't punch through the wire. As we said, the wire is very resistant to heat, but you mix heat with a very, very sharp edge on a shovel, and you can cut into that very resilient cable. So please be careful as you hand spread this. Now, if we take a look here, we're progressing across the driveway, and you can see that we have a green section that heats, and in the lower right-hand corner, you're going to see that green section made up to a little 6-inch long or so gray piece, and then you're going to see a black cable. That black cable is simply the power supply cable. The gray piece in there is the factory splice that connects the power supply to the heating cable. And it's very, very important that you do not walk on the splice, you do not bend the splice, and that the splice is at least 4 inches outside of the conduit. You have to do that because that's what the National Electric Code requires. So the manufacturer's splice is very simple to find. It's where it goes from green to black. It's very, very important that it gets embedded in the asphalt, not in the conduit. So that's what you're going to look for. Also, when you're doing an asphalt job, it's very important that you put a sensor out there between a couple of the heating cables, not on them, but between them. That's going to tell you how hot the sidewalk or the driveway is going to get. So what you're going to do is you're going to want to get that sensor in there, and you do need to do that with asphalt. It's not that important when you're doing concrete or pavers, but for asphalt, that sensor has to be in. The one important thing is the sensor needs to go in its own conduit. It cannot go in the same conduit as the heating cable. Now, we've got our wire situated, and we've got our first two mats installed up there to the upper right-hand corner. So you can see we're dealing with the finished surface there. And now they're continuing to get the two other cables running down towards the other part of the driveway. Along the right side, you can see where the junction box is. It's right there. It's going there. It isn't there yet, but that's where the conduit is coming out. That's where the cold leads have all been routed. So as you can tell, we have noticed, or on the drawing, it was told to us that the box is going to be going right in the middle of the driveway. So we designed the mats to go away from the box, and that's how we can all put them together into one junction box. So if you look there, you can see that we're only unrolling a bit of the cable at a time, and we are covering it by hand and raking it by hand. There are no mechanical spreaders going over this surface at this time. Now, this picture is a great picture because we can see that we are doing the final surfacing on this as we're dumping asphalt onto the lower reaches of the two cables as they go out towards the other part of the driveway. The key here is to do it quickly, because the longer you wait, the cooler the asphalt becomes.
Is that why that guy has a propane tank? To keep it hot?
Yep, he's throwing flames from the propane tank down onto the asphalt to help get it to lay nice and flat. As you can see, the longer you're there, the cooler the asphalt gets. So in certain spots, you might have to hit it with the flame every couple times just to warm it up again, and then they can run that over there. But the reason why this is such a good picture is because you can see the final finish being put on, and we don't even have all the rolls unrolled yet. So now we can see the location of the junction box and the conduits. There are a bunch of conduits there. Remember, one conduit is dedicated solely for the sensor, and remember, it cannot go in the conduits with the other heating or the non-heating leads for that snow melting system. Now, if you take a look at the junction box, it's sitting right there. The main thing about a junction box is it has to be weatherproof. If you decide to put it in the ground, it needs to be accessible and it needs to be waterproof down inside. It has to be rated for burial in the ground. So you can do it one of two ways. You can have it elevated like it is there, or you can have it buried in the ground. But the thing is, you have to remember, you always have to be able to access the wires, because that's where the wires from the house are going to meet up with the wires coming from the mats, and then they get put together in that junction box. Your electrician is going to supply the wire between that junction box and your house. Now let's take a look at the controls that are available for these types of jobs. There's multiple controllers. We're going to start from the right side instead of from the left, because the ones on the right side are ones that you really can't use with asphalt, because there are no sensors going into the slab with these units. So we do not suggest the manual melting system because it does not have a sensor. We do not recommend the value melting system because it does not have a sensor in the slab. We can use the economy melting system because it has a slab sensor. The advanced melting system cannot be used, or we do not recommend it for asphalt because it does not have a sensor going into the asphalt. But the premium and the power modulator melting system is available for the system because they both have sensors for the slab. Before we leave this, I want to take a look at the premium melting system. The premium melting system, it's all or nothing. It's going to turn on everything and it's going to shut off everything. So if you have a job that's requiring more amps than you have, you cannot use that system either because it turns everything on and everything off. There is no zoning with that premium melting system. If you need to zone, if you only have a certain amount of amps available, you're going to need to use the power modulator system to turn one system on, then off, the other one on, then off. So there's never pulling more than amperage that you have available. So you don't turn one section on, then turn the other, and then turn it off. It has to be on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. And the only thing that can do that is the power modulator melting system.
Now, Scott, what system was used for this project that we've been showing?
We used the power modulator system. So we could split it into 1 zone, 2 zone, 3 zones, that sort of thing. Plus it had a sensor that could go into the asphalt. So here we can take a look at the finished driveway, and with this finished driveway, all you really need to do now is add snow. When you put a system in, the first few times you use it, it's not going to, it may work perfectly, it may not work perfectly because it's set up as an average setup. There is a sensor on that junction box that's visible there in the center of the picture. You can see the junction boxes there. Well, they put a sensor right near that, so it's very close to the system. That's what the basic idea you want of your sensor. You want to put the sensor as close to where you're melting as you can. You don't want it's like putting a sensor in Illinois but running the snow melt in Idaho. It needs to be in the same area. So you would want to put it right by the system that you're trying to heat. So you may run into times that you may have to turn it on for a little bit longer. You may have to turn it on for a little bit shorter. What we're trying to do is we're trying to balance electric usage with making sure that the system melts the snow and evaporates the water and leaves behind a nice clear surface. Here we can take a look at the tire track system put in. We did a little bit wider here at the very beginning to allow the customer to turn and get onto the snow melt area. But here you can see how it's doing just that, and it's not heating the rest of the system, but you can see it's generating enough heat in the center that it's starting to work around the edges there in the center. So, but once again, we are turning the system on. Now, we talked about the sensor, the exterior aerial sensor, not the slab sensor that goes in. We're talking about the aerial sensor. The aerial sensor is the one that says, hey, controller, I need you to turn on now because the snow is falling and it's below 38 degrees, whatever trigger you set that at. Well, what it's going to do is it's also going to tell the controller, hey, controller, it stopped snowing. Well, the controller is not just going to stop immediately when the sensor says, okay, we're done. It's going to run that system to continue to melt the snow to get it. Once again, you're not melting snow and just leaving a puddles of water. You need to melt the snow, evaporate the water so it leaves behind a nice dry surface. That's what's called after run time. The amount of time that it runs after the sensor says it's done snowing until our time is elapsed. That could be 6 hours, 8 hours, whatever you want that to be. And that's the part that needs to be fine-tuned as you go along.
We actually have a question from Kathy. She wants to know what is the price of installing a snow melting system?
Well, Kathy, the snow melt system price to install, I really can't tell you because asphalt and that sort of stuff, there's a wide range of prices from the East Coast to the West Coast. I couldn't even begin to tell you what the differences are. I mean, they're very large. But what I can do is we can tell you the cost of the product that we supplied, and that is we had 4 mats. They were 240-volt mats. The amp total was 67 and a half amps. The total wattage of the system was 15,015 watts. We used the power modulator control. It was $1,400. And we used the snow ice aerial sensor, which is $265. The National Electric Code says, hey, don't wait. I mean, wait a second. You have to get that snow melt plaque in there. And the snow melt plaque, what it does is it tells anyone that's going to be working on this driveway that there is electric cable inside of that driveway. That's something you don't want somebody to come out and not know. So if you took a look at this system, it costs about $1.27 per hour to operate, and it costs about 8 cents per kilowatt hour is what that's based on. That's the national average. You may have 10 cents, you may have 7 cents, whatever that kilowatt per hour charge is, but that's what that cost was based on. Now, does
All
anybody
right.
have
Well,
any questions? Is that where we're going to go?
yeah, I think that's where we're gonna go. So right now, if you do have questions, there is a panel on the left-hand side of the screen. So while you guys are submitting your questions, I'll take the time to tell you about our current promotion. Our promotion right now is 15% off on all sizes and voltages of our snow melting systems and cables, so mats and cables, and it's a great deal. And it's an easy way to cut down costs on your project costs, but it won't last forever. So you can check that out on the banner at our homepage at WarmlyYours.com. And if you have any more questions about our products and services, such as our 24/7 installation support, you can contact us via email at info@warmlyyours.com or by calling us at 1-800-875-5285, or you can visit our website as well. We do have a chat icon. You can talk to a representative that way. Now, after this webinar, there will be a survey, and because we're always striving to improve our webinars and feedback is key, so after this webinar, a survey page will be launched, and once you complete the survey, you'll be given a coupon code for $50 off your next Warmly Yours purchase. A link to the survey will also be included in the webinar follow-up email for those of you who have pop-up blockers. And don't forget to join us for our next webinar. It's held May 11th. It's introducing our new product line, the Marquee LED mirrors. It's held Thursday, May 11th, as I mentioned, at 2 p.m. Central Time. The registration link will also be included in the follow-up email. Thank you guys for joining us today as we went through the whole install. Thank you, Scott, for everything and clarifying a lot of questions that people have had. Feel free to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, all that. Keep up to date with our products, updates, and more webinars. Again, thank you again. Have a great weekend and stay warm and radiant.